The Breakfast Club is the 14th episode of So Little Time, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. We have one main narrative and a slightly smaller narrative, which I'll talk about very briefly. There will be some spoilers as I discuss what happens in this and mention a couple of personal highlights as well. And the subplot involves Chloe and Riley's parents trying to sort out their belongings from when they were married. They accumulated a lot of stuff over time, and it was fine. It was interesting enough. It was quite nice to see boxes everywhere visually. I think they did a really good job of representing just how much stuff people might accumulate over a certain amount of time. It was fine, not the most interesting, but it worked well enough. We then have part of the narrative focusing mostly on Chloe, a little bit on Riley. Chloe wants to spend time with Travis, but Chloe is a model student and Travis is always getting into trouble, so she doesn't think that it will ever happen. So she spends the episode trying to get into trouble so that she can have a detention, so that she can spend time in the detention room with Travis. And that seems like a pretty terrible, stupid idea. And I really liked how it played out. She ended up trying to get into trouble. For example, she shook up her teacher's soda can, which I have to say was very funny, and she didn't get blamed for it, and other people started to get into trouble on her behalf. And eventually, she does get a detention for what I think is an exceptionally stupid reason, I have to say. Unless there's some reason why this is such a big issue with the school. She got a detention for littering, for discarding an empty can. That seems like a bit extreme to get a detention for littering. But nevertheless, she did. And she went into the detention room just as Travis was coming out. And everybody else in the room was there basically because of her. They got into trouble for things that she did, so they were annoyed at her. I like the fact that she didn't get what she was trying to seek out, because then it would obviously suggest that getting a detention is a way to talk to somebody you like, and that's just never a good idea. So I liked how it played out. I was also very keen to find out if she would get a detention and the things that she would be trying to do. So very well done. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we have the story with Riley. And Riley is lab partners with Larry. And she decides, instead of trying to avoid him, she decides that maybe she should actually give him a chance. And she invites him over for a study date, and she invites him by first of all hiding in his locker the way he does with hers, which I just thought was very funny. And they have their study date, but unfortunately he brings over some frogs to give them a kind of last hurrah before they get dissected, which is sweet but also gross. I'm not a huge fan of frogs at all, and well, it causes quite a bit of havoc, and we'll come back to that in a moment. I wasn't necessarily expecting Riley to ever be open to the idea of dating Larry, but if that's what they're going with, I think this point in the series is a pretty decent point. I feel like this is a good place to start to introduce this, and I'm keen to see what they'll do with this, and if they will ever properly date, or if they're just going to kind of drip feed little things like that. So I enjoyed it. I think all aspects of the Breakfast Club was really interesting and very well done. And the other bit that I loved is right at the very end, when Manuelo has been in the bath and he comes running, screaming through the room, wrapped in a towel because there's a frog in his bath. Larry was not able to fully round up all of the frogs, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really entertaining. Definitely, I'd say one of my favourite episodes. The Breakfast Club was pretty decent.